Just as the barrel of a 98K sniper rifle locked onto him, he froze in place. Even when a speeding car came tearing straight at him, he didn't so much as flinch, just stopped again. He ran the timing in his head with freakish accuracy, then ducked at the perfect second. People call him a magician, but really he's more like a sorcerer, because every move he makes is driven by foresight. Like the time he told a woman her necklace would fall in exactly 3 seconds. She laughed it off, didn't believe a word, but he counted it down. 3, 2, 1. Chris isn't guessing. He's gifted. He can see 2 minutes into the future. With a power like that, his life is smooth and loaded. He never runs out of money. When his cash gets low, he just walks up to a slot machine, presses a button, and bam, jackpot. He wins every time. But Chris keeps his bets small. He knows better than to draw too much heat. As the saying goes, the tallest tree catches the most wind. Still, even being low-key couldn't stop the casino manager from getting suspicious. They started watching him like hawks, but no matter how hard they looked, they couldn't figure out how he was pulling it off, because he wasn't cheating. At one point, it even seemed like Chris knew they were onto him. He looked right at the security cam. That was enough for the manager. "Grab him, now!" But Chris was already a step ahead. Cool as ever, he put out his cigarette, walked to the counter to cash out, and got ready to disappear. That's when things went sideways. A gunman stormed in, pulled a weapon without warning, snapped out of a premonition. Chris had already seen it. He disarmed the guy before he even had a chance to react. But when security rushed in, they assumed Chris was the threat. Knowing there was no point trying to explain, Chris took off. The manager locked down every exit, but Chris had already planned the perfect escape, 2 minutes ahead of everyone. First, he faked blowing his nose, slipping past the first guard. At the corner, he lit a cigarette and bent down to tie his shoe, dodging a second. Leaning on a slot machine, he took a long drag and avoided the third's gaze. He glanced at his watch, just in time to miss the 4th patrol. Then, spinning off into a hallway, he brushed past the 5th guard unnoticed. Back in the control room, the head of security was losing it. Chris stepped into a restroom, tossed his shirt in the trash, and leaned against the wall like nothing was happening. He grabbed a hat, strolled out cool and casual, pretending to use the vending machine, just as 2 more guards rushed by. Finally, he walked right out of the building, ditched the hat, jumped into a convertible, and peeled out without a glance back. The manager, steaming with anger, watched the car disappear, then reported the license plate straight to the cops. They moved fast. In no time, 2 squad cars were chasing him down. Chris could drive like a pro, but no matter what tricks he pulled, they were still on him. So locked in on the chase, he didn't notice the real danger ahead. Luckily, the crash played out in his mind before it happened. At his current speed, no way he could avoid it, unless he pushed harder. So he floored it, blasted past 120, and squeezed through the crossing just before everything went wrong. After losing the tail, Chris made it back to his temporary hideout. It was Irving's place, one of the few people who actually knew about his ability. Just like always, Irving gave him the same old warning. Don't overuse the gift unless you're begging for trouble. But Chris knew better. Trouble doesn't need an invitation. It shows up on its own, like the unexpected guest who walked in just then. Still, Chris didn't flinch. He'd already seen her coming. What surprised him wasn't the visit, but how a few harmless hustles landed him on the FBI's radar. Callie didn't waste time. Calm and sharp, just like Chris, she got straight to the point. She'd noticed something weird about him months ago during one of his shows. Wasn't sure at the time. But after watching the casino footage, seeing how he dodged every trap with a streak of coincidences, she had no doubts left. A terrorist group had smuggled a nuclear bomb into the US. It was hidden somewhere in the country, and now Callie wanted Chris to use his power to help find it. But Chris didn't even hesitate. He said no, flat out. First off, Chris couldn't see anything that wasn't directly tied to him, or anything more than 2 minutes ahead. Second, after being branded as delusional when he was a kid, the cops tossed him into psychiatric care. Ever since, he's never trusted the authorities, and he wasn't about to start now. Callie, of course, saw this coming. That's why she already had a full team of officers posted around the place. But here's the kicker. Everything she said had already played out in Chris's mind. With that head start, he slipped out the back door before she even made it to the front. By the time Callie knocked, he was already miles away. After losing his tail, Chris didn't go underground. Instead, the very next morning, he popped up at a quiet little diner. He kept eyeing his watch, clearly waiting for someone important. Ever since he discovered his gift, he'd realized it only worked on stuff that had to do with him, and only within a tight 2-minute window. But one girl broke that rule. She'd been dreaming the same thing for years, that on a certain day, at exactly 8:09 a.m., she'd meet her soulmate in a diner. And today was the day. When the clock hit 8:09, she walked in, just like in his vision. Chris froze. She was a total stranger, but somehow felt like someone he'd known forever. Chris had to know why this girl kept popping up in his dreams. So he got up and tried to make a move.
Hello. Do you mind if I join you?
Actually, I do.
But basic small talk didn't get him far, so he went with a bolder approach.
But I have a question about the coffee.
Isn't that something you should probably ask your waitress?
Excuse me, do you have a light?
I don't smoke.
A few awkward attempts later, nothing was sticking. That's when a guy in a suit walked in, and things went sideways. Tension flared fast, and it got heated. Sensing his chance, Chris jumped in to defuse the situation. With his gift, he read every move before it happened and easily got the upper hand. Then, with his usual cool, he turned to the girl with a confident intro. But what Chris hoped would be a smooth hero moment blew up in his face. The whole thing came off forced, and she wasn't having it. Running out of plays, Chris did something different. This time, he let the guy land a punch. It hurt like hell, but it won her sympathy. Truth is, women feel things deeply. Sometimes acting vulnerable is your best shot. After threatening to call the cops, she finally sent her ex, the guy in the suit, packing. And that's when Chris finally learned her name, Liz. Seeing his shot, Chris kept the energy going and managed to score a ride with her. But what he didn't expect, Liz was driving hours away to Arizona. Her stop? A Native American reservation where she volunteered as a teacher. Twice a week she made the trip, bringing books, supplies, and birthday gifts for the kids. Standing by the waterfall, laughing with the children, Liz just radiated kindness. She wasn't just pretty, she had heart. And this whole meant-to-be thing? Chris was really starting to feel it. Even when she caught him staring, he didn't look away. He walked up to the birthday boy and pulled off a magic trick. That move, it earned him her smile and started to break the ice. Later on, as rain came pouring down, the two ended up at a roadside motel where only one room was left. Ever the gentleman, Chris offered to crash in the car. That long night, filled with quiet tension, had Liz tossing in bed. The next morning, as she stepped out of the shower, towel wrapped around her, Chris greeted her with a playful little magic trick.
Wow.
But just as the vibe was shifting, the FBI finally tracked him down. This time, Callie had the whole area on lockdown. Agents posted everywhere to ensure he couldn't escape again. Meanwhile, she stopped Liz just as she stepped out to grab breakfast. Calm and direct, Callie pulled her into a parked car and flashed her badge. Inside, she laid it all out, painting Chris as unstable and dangerous. With the weight of her FBI badge and footage showing Chris with a gun at the casino, Liz started to question everything. Agent Al handed her a tiny bottle of pills. All she had to do was slip one into Chris's drink. 5 minutes later, he'd be out cold. That's when the FBI would make their move. But what Callie didn't realize was they weren't the only ones watching. A terrorist group, the same one that smuggled a nuclear bomb into the US, had eyes on her every step. Their leader had been following her efforts to locate someone with precognition and started to suspect Chris might be that person. Even though the idea seemed far-fetched, they couldn't risk it. So they sent a team of killers to trail the feds and wipe out the threat. What Callie completely overlooked was how fierce a woman in love could be. When Liz got back to the motel, full of doubt, she dropped the pill into a glass of juice, right before Chris gently wrapped his arms around her. That's when Liz cracked. She confessed everything. Chris didn't say a word. Instead, he flipped on the TV to drown out their voices from any hidden bugs. Then, staying cool, he quietly swapped the spiked drink with a clean one, opened the doors and windows, and calmly walked out to the balcony, sipping the juice like nothing was up. It was a setup, buying them 5 critical minutes of peace. Inside, Chris finally told Liz everything. About his gift, about why he'd stayed off the grid. He knew it sounded insane, but then he showed her. And no matter how unbelievable it was, what she saw left no doubt. To keep her safe, Chris handed Liz a note with specific steps. She had to follow it in exactly 45 seconds. Then, he bolted. Watching from her van, Callie sensed something was off. Chris was already halfway down the mountain. Disguised agents and Callie herself took off after him, but just as Chris followed his carefully mapped route, he ran straight into the scope of a terrorist sniper. A last-second head turn threw the shooter completely off. Back at the motel, 45 seconds on the dot, Liz did what the note said. She started a car, bailed, and let it roll. It crashed into a water tower, toppling it. The impact sent gear and tools sliding downhill, burying most of the agents chasing Chris. He dodged the chaos and reached a small mountain road, only to find Callie waiting, gun in hand. That's when the final load of falling debris crushed a stack of lumber. It came tumbling straight at her. Callie holstered her weapon and stood her ground, like she was ready to take the hit. But her life wasn't repaid in kind. Instead, Chris was dragged off to a hidden chamber, strapped to a chair with his eyes forced open, made to watch news reports over and over again. To stop a nuclear disaster and save millions, Callie needed Chris to use his powers to locate the warhead before it was too late. Under pressure, Chris pushed himself harder than ever, reaching further into the future. Then it hit. He saw a terrifying broadcast. Liz strapped with explosives held by terrorists. The place, a parking garage. The time, 6:00 p.m. The bomb squad moved in, and then everything exploded. Snapping back to the present, Chris was shaken but focused. He couldn't let that future happen. So, he agreed to help. He and Callie rushed to the garage from his vision, trying to track down the chain of events before the explosion occurred. Scanning futures, Chris spotted one detail: a license plate. The FBI ran it, and it led them right to the terrorists' hideout, catching them off guard as they prepped for the attack. Gunfire erupted fast, but with Chris guiding them, no ambush landed. Every enemy, every trap, he already saw it coming. Their leader grabbed Liz and bolted to the docks, locking himself inside a ship. Under heavy guard, Chris followed. Even when they planted light-triggered C4 down the halls, Chris had already walked the path in his mind. He led the team past every bomb like it was second nature. Then, around one corner, he took a bullet to the chest, but only in a vision. Back in the moment, the SWAT unit took out the hidden sniper before he could even aim. Chris's gift wasn't just seeing ahead, it was simulation. He sent endless versions of himself down different paths, testing every possible result, every outcome. In minutes, Chris had mentally scanned the entire ship. Eventually, one version located Liz. With Callie alongside him, Chris pinned down the terrorist leader. The man resisted, but against Chris's power, it was useless. One clean shot from Callie ended it.
It's over.
They opened the crate where the warhead was supposed to be, but it was gone. The bomb had already been relocated. As he stared at the empty space, a cold truth struck him. He'd missed something vital. The nuke went off a few miles away. In an instant, Chris woke up, back in the motel bed. Everything that just played out, the pursuit, the firefights, every decision, was just a vision. Because of Liz, Chris's ability had evolved, breaking past the old 2-minute limit. Now, he could see a full 24 hours ahead, and this time, the future was his to change. Subscribe for more videos like this, turn on notifications, and leave a like to support the channel. Thank you for watching.